the first question is, what are you going to do with the car? How many miles are you going to put on it? And then where do you see yourself 3 years from now? Then we'll determine if you should lease or buy. And then we'll outline both, the lease and the purchase. You can see the monthly payments on both scenarios, and then you decide which one is more fit for you.
iDriveSoCal, the podcast all about mobility from the automotive capital of the United States, Southern California. Tom Smith here, and I am excited to be at Ontario Volkswagen with my good pal Shant Bashian, the general sales manager of Ontario Volkswagen. And topic du jour today is one that's on a lot of people's minds when they go to buy a new car, and that is just simply, do I buy or do I lease? I've formed some personal opinions on it myself, but we're going to hear from the man here at Ontario Volkswagen. Mr. Bashian, thank you so much for joining me yet again.
Thanks for having me, Tom. And that question comes up all the time. I find that most people know whether they want to buy or lease because they understand it now. There's a lot of information out there. For us, we have a different perspective regarding buying versus lease. We're in the business, and we like to get the upgraded product, rather quickly. But it really comes down to this. What are you planning on doing with the vehicle? What's the purpose of the car? How many miles are you going to drive it? And are you the type of person that likes to have something new rather quickly? Do you get bored of your vehicle? So you have to look into that. Buying a car, it's more of a long-term commitment, really. So most people right now will purchase a vehicle and finance it for 60 to 72 months. They have most vehicles will come with 3-year or 4-year warranties backed by the manufacturer. When it comes to Volkswagens, we have a 6-year, 72,000 mile warranty right now that covers the bumper to bumper and the powertrain. So when it comes to purchasing a Volkswagen, throughout your monthly payment term, you are covered. If anything should go wrong, you have nothing to worry about. So there's no additional expense to look into. But again, that's if you're planning on keeping the car for a long time. Now, if you're the type of person who likes to get something new every few years, that's when lease comes into play. Also, some leases may be tax deductible from your income, and I advise you to check with your accountant on that.
Depends on what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've had some buddies that have been in the sales world, and they're able to write off their entire lease payment.
You can write off the miles. I know that. I don't know if you could write off the entire lease payment. Again, you got to check with your accountant.
Case by case.
It's case by case. But again, so here you have, let's say, typically a 3-year lease. You make those minimum monthly payments for 3 years. The monthly payment will be less than a purchase in most cases. Most cases, you're looking at $65, $70, $80 less than a purchase. And after 3 years, there's no headache. There's no, I got to sell my car, or I got to trade my car in. Yep. You walk into the dealership and you have options. You can buy out your lease at the residual value, which is set the day you sign that contract. So if you have a $21,000 car, you get into a lease of, let's say, $200 a month. And at the end, your residual value on that vehicle is $12,000. After 3 years, your payments are done. You can walk in, you can turn the vehicle in and get something else. You don't have to worry about trying to sell it, trying to trade it.
Right.
Or you could buy that vehicle at the residual value of $12,000 plus tax. And then you own it. You can finance that dollar amount. You can pay cash for it. You can sell it to someone else. You can trade it into another dealership. There's so many options at the end of the lease.
So the residual is what my car is going to be worth at the end of this lease.
That's correct. So your residual is based on the amount of mileage you're planning on putting on the car. So if you go into a 30,000 mile lease, obviously that's going to differ than a 36,000 mile lease or a 45,000 mile lease. So that's what the lender, they say, okay, 45,000 miles, 3 years from now, this vehicle will be worth X dollar amount. That's your residual value.
And going back a little bit further, you had mentioned in most cases the lease will be less. And you just touched on miles. And I'm assuming, depending on how many miles you're buying on that lease, is going to be that in most cases situation.
That's correct. Yes. Sometimes we'll get a phone call and the gentleman or lady will state, I need a lease and I want to get 25,000 miles per year. And at this point, I'm like, okay, let me explain something. I'll give you the numbers, no problem.
Right.
But you might as well buy the car.
Right.
Because if you're going to pay a 25,000 mile per year lease, it's the same thing as a purchase or close or maybe even more. You see? So after 3 years, you're planning on having 75,000 miles on that car. you're real close to 100,000. You might as well buy the car.
That's a lot of miles.
Yeah, some people put that mileage. And those people, I advise, you buy the car. You don't lease that car.
And that's because?
That's because you're planning on driving it to the ground.
Okay. And the value at because you're putting so many miles on it, the value at the end of that lease term or at the end of the purchase term doesn't matter because you put a ton of miles on it in a short amount of time.
That is correct. So the residual value will suffer. When you're leasing a car, okay, now that's more kind of simplified, if you can say. Some people say, oh, when I'm leasing the car, I don't own the vehicle.
Right.
Versus if I'm buying the car, I own the vehicle. Let me explain something. If you're financing this car, you don't own the car.
Yeah, the bank does.
The bank owns the car. And if you're leasing the car, the bank owns the car. The only difference is this. After a 3-year or a 4-year lease term, you have options on what you can do with that car. Because if you're tired of it and you want to walk away, you're free to do so. Versus purchase, you are not liable. You are tied into that contract until the end of the term. So after 3 years, if you're tired of that vehicle, or if your family grew, you have 2 kids now, and you got a mid-sized sedan, and that double stroller doesn't fit anymore. Now trying to get out of that vehicle because you purchased it is going to be a little bit tougher. So that's why you got to decide, where am I going to be 3 years from now, realistically? Right. That's how you got to look at it.
Where do people get in trouble when they lease a car and then turn around, oh my God, get a big surprise bill at the end of it?
2 different things. Excessive wear and tear will be if your wheels have been curbed. So you just, you try to park the vehicle, you hit that curb, you scrape the bumpers, you have dings, dents, scratches, torn seats, cracked windshield. This is excessive wear and tear. The lender will come in and inspect the vehicle, and they'll charge you for those. So most of the time, cars come back in fairly good shape. I've seen some rough cars come back in, but they had excess wear waiver. Excess wear waiver with Volkswagen credit will waive up to $10,000 in excessive wear and tear. That's including
$10,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
The only thing you need to understand with excess wear and tear, it covers excessive wear and tear. That doesn't mean you can return the car with a door missing or a bumper hanging off, because that's not excessive wear and tear. That's collision or...
Sometimes you need to spell out common sense, right?
So that's one, yeah, because, and I say that these days, I didn't say these things earlier in my career because I never even, I didn't foresee it. I wasn't expecting for people to think, oh, I could bring the car with front and rear bumpers missing. It doesn't work that way. That's not excess wear and tear. That bumper's missing. That's a problem, right? And then the other scenario I ran into, we tell people, they ask, what if I go over my miles?
And that's where I wanted to get to. And I figured you'd have something else to point out that I didn't think of. And that was the excess wear and tear. But what I was kind of going towards is the miles. Because a lot of people that I talk to, like, oh, I leased once, it didn't work out. I had this huge number that I had to pay at the end of the lease. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why was that?
Right.
It's like, well, I wanted to get my payment as low as possible, so I figured I'd only drive 5,000 miles a year.
That's impossible.
It's like, well, no, you got to be realistic, right? I mean, for me personally, I like leasing for the getting something new all the time. Also, what I recommend to people when they ask me is, hey, buy more miles than you think you're going to need, because they're typically way cheaper when you buy them, commit to them up front, as opposed to have to go over and then pay for them on the back end. And in the case of Volkswagen, what is that? Is there a standard number that, hey, this is how much it's going to cost me when I'm committing to the lease? And this is, you already said it's 20 cents a mile on the back end.
Typically, upfront mileage is 12 cents.
Big difference there.
So right now, you can actually, once a year, you can call VW Credit, and you can buy more miles throughout your lease. So I leased an Atlas. I have 12,000 mile lease. Mm-hmm. It's a 3-year term. And right now we're averaging about 14,000 miles already. I've been in the vehicle for almost 2 years. So all I do is pick up the phone, call VW Credit, and say I need to buy another 3,000, another 4,000, or another 5,000 miles. And they'll calculate that mileage, I believe, is at 15 cents.
Okay.
And then they'll just put that into my payments.
So it's because not all manufacturers do that as far as being able to adjust your mileage midstream in the lease. I know that not everybody does that. So that's a great thing that Volkswagen offers. And you can do that once a year for each year of the lease?
Yes, you can.
That's a great thing.
Volkswagen credit leases are simple. You can return the car anywhere in the country at any Volkswagen dealer.
Got it. Okay. Well, a lot of great information, and sounds like your perspective, case by case basis, the factors you laid out earlier. Is there anything else? Hey, I'm a new customer, Shant, just rolled up to Ontario Volkswagen. I'm really torn between buying and leasing. Any other suggestions or points that you want to make for me as someone considering going either way?
The first question is, what are you going to do with the car? How many miles are you going to put on it? And then where do you see yourself 3 years from now? Then we'll determine if you should lease or buy. And then we'll outline both, the lease and the purchase. You can see the monthly payments on both scenarios, and then you decide which one is more fit for you.
All right. Well, all good information. Thank you so much, as always, Mr. Shant Bashian here at Ontario Volkswagen. You guys are a wealth of information for the iDriveSoCal listeners and surfers if you're coming across iDriveSoCal.com. Thank you, as always, for iDrive. Oh, you know what? I think in the last podcast we dropped your contact information. Do you want to do that here?
My direct line will be 909-230-5611. 909-230-5611. That'll ring directly to my office. Email is sbashian@ontariovw.com.
Additional questions for whether or not you should buy or lease, reach out to Mr. Bashian. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Most appreciated. For iDriveSoCal, I am Tom Smith. Thank you, as always, for tuning in.
This episode was engineered and edited by Bobby Flores.